Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing, 1, 2. All right, I see one person there. If you can, if you can hear me, just put a note in there, just letting me know that I can hear you, that you can hear me. So we are still about 5 minutes ahead of time. So we're going to wait until 7 just to see if more people show up. And so just give me a minute and we'll get started with tonight's live stream. All right. Thanks for letting me know that. I see that you guys can hear me. So we should all be set to go. So again, we're set to start at 7 o'clock, which is about 4 minutes from now. So we'll just give a few more minutes and then we'll get moving. But as I'm kind of giving this class, make sure that you jump in with any questions that you have, and we will take it from there. All right, so it is just about 7 o'clock. So we're going to be together for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, depending upon you and what questions that you may or may not have. But the focus of tonight is really just to give you, first just some introductory statements about the GED test itself, talking about the 4 tests and what you can kind of expect there. And then really some updates, some things that have changed. And then from there, we want to jump into solving for X. So we want to work on some algebra type problems that you can encounter on the GED test. Now, this is very important because one of the key things to know about the GED test is that is to know what's actually going to be on it. And so, if you've been watching my YouTube channel for any period of time, you know that I'm very big on kind of prepping you for what's on this test and the types of questions that you're going to see. Because one of the number one things that students have always told me over time is that, I studied and I studied and I studied, and then I got to the GED test and then nothing, or everything I studied just wasn't there, or it seemed to be more algebra than I was expecting. So we're going to specifically talk about one particular branch of algebra tonight. And then, in future of these live streams, we'll cover other types of subject matter, maybe more algebra, maybe writing, maybe social studies, maybe science. So, but again, as I'm going on, you can put a note in the chat window if you have a question about something that I'm specifically covering, and we can kind of go with it that way. So let's kind of just hit our updates. So now the updates on the GED test. Now, some of these things I'm going to share, maybe maybe you don't know, but I'm just sharing them just for the good of the order, because this is a national, potentially international audience. And so, and then people who will see this live stream later just as a YouTube video. So some people don't know these things. So number one is back in 2016, 3 years ago, the GED test made a decision to lower its passing standard from 150 to 145. This was something that was great because it allowed a lot more people to pass the test. Now, there are a few states in the country that still have that 150 requirement. I won't go into that right here, but always check with your state and make sure that you are a state that has the score of 145. The second thing is that on the social studies test, there used to be an extended response, or you might recognize that more as an essay. Well, the essay in 16 was taken off, and then later on, the science test had a section called the short answer, where in addition to the different question types, there was actually a little short answer, which was more based upon the experiment, and that has been removed. So those are some of the more major changes. And then, the math test, almost immediately got a little bit more time to take the test. It's currently at 115 minutes. So those are some things that you need to know about the test. Now, one of the things that I've always been big on is just trying to help you understand what percentage of the questions you need to get correct in order to pass the test. So by and large, you need to get about 65% of the questions correct in order to give yourself the safe zone to get 145, the passing score. So let me just jump to a whiteboard here. And so on this whiteboard here, you are going, okay, I think you can see that now. Let me get a different color here. So for example, if you take a look at the math test has 46 questions on it, thereabouts. It could be more, could be a little less. Every test is potentially different. So the math test has 46 questions. Now, one thing we also know is that 55% of the questions are algebra questions. So 55% of the questions are algebra questions, and then 45% of the test questions are basic math. So basically, you're looking at about 25, 26 of the questions. We'll just say 26 are going to be algebra questions, and then we'll say 20 are going to be basic math questions. This is not exact, but this is just kind of giving you a sense of, just in a general way to think about this. So now, if you need to get 65% of the questions correct, you want to get somewhere in the zone, somewhere between 30 and 32, maybe 33 of these questions correct. So you can miss, let's just say you can miss 15 questions, okay? So you can miss 15. And I'm just going to write miss next to that. Now, so because you can miss 15 questions, what that allows you to do is a little bit of strategy. So you want to get the majority of the basic math questions correct, because those are the easier ones. And in those, you want to get those correct. But so let's just say if you get 15 of these correct, and say you miss 5, but you get about 15 of those correct, and then you come up here and say you get about 15 of those correct, that means you can miss 10 of the algebra type question content. So what that helps you to know is that when you're taking this test, it helps you to know that because you can miss 10, you take a little bit of the pressure off of yourself, thinking that you have to somehow achieve perfection and get everything correct. So you can miss 10 here and miss 5 here and still have a really good chance of hitting that 145 mark. So everything that we're talking about tonight is really going to be in that spirit, so that we understand that the number of questions are about 46. About 26 of those are algebra. Let me just write algebra there. And then about 45% of those are basic. Okay. And so what we understand there then is that we can miss about 15 questions and still have success on this test. So what we're going to talk about tonight is in that vein, and just understanding what you can actually miss, how that works, and so that when you sit down for this test, you can be successful. So that's a little bit about the intro. That's a little bit about the updates. Now I want to go ahead and jump in to solving for X, because this skill is a skill that you'll actually see on the test, and it'll look like this. There are many offshoots of this. Of course, there's word problems that involve these types of equations. Sometimes there's a question that will show you the steps to solving a particular problem, and then they'll ask you, was there an error made in the step? So it's very important to understand this whole concept of solving for X. And so let's go ahead and jump in. So the first one I'm going to do is number 1. Y over 3 plus 3 equals 6. So, maybe you've had a chance to do this if you had a chance to do the pre-work, but if not, we're going to do it right now. Let me get the right size pen here. All right, so here we go. So the first one is y over 3 plus 3 equals 6. And again, as I am working through these problems, make sure that you put your question in the chat window. And then that way I can stop and try to answer and address your question as we're going on. So this first one here, and so what I want to explain before we jump into actual steps of doing it, I want to explain what we're trying to do. So our whole goal is to get down here at the end of the problem and have y equals something. So what that means is we want to have on this side the y, and that's the y is already over here. And on this side, we want to have the answer or the number. So again, the whole point of what we're doing is we're trying to get y equals something because we're looking for that answer. Now, this is a little bit of an easier one. You might be able to look at this one and already know off the top what y equals, but let's work through it because there are going to be equations where you're not going to be able to look at it and tell right away. So let's jump in. So the first thing we're going to do, and the first skill that I want to talk to you about with solving for x, is the skill about doing the opposite. The opposite. And so the way in the idea of combine like terms. So the first one I'm going to talk about is combining like terms, and then I'm going to talk about the opposite. Okay, so let me see if I can get my screen here. So combining like terms and the opposite. So now the first thing that I want to look at when we're talking about that is combining like terms. And what do I mean by like terms? So when I say like terms, I'm really talking about things that are not the same, but that are alike. And so 3 and 6 are not the same, of course, but they're alike. So I'm going to mark those with the red. And then y over 3 doesn't have anything else because this is a letter variable over a number. And so that's a different term. So when we talk about combining like terms, we want to get the things that are alike combined or together. And so the way we do that is this second concept here, which is the opposite. And sorry, I missed my E there. The second concept is the opposite. So right here, we want to get these two numbers together, and we want to have y over here, and we want to have the number over here as our final answer, and we want to combine these two terms. And so we want to do that by doing the opposite. So if this is plus 3, then the opposite of plus 3 is minus 3. And if I do minus 3, the opposite from this side, I also have to do it from this side. Why? Because this is an equation. So that means that this side is equal to this side. So if I remove something right here from this side, I also have to remove it here from this side so that it can remain equal. So 3 minus 3 is 0. So then I'm just going to bring my y over 3 down. That just drops down. It dropped down my equal sign. And then 6 minus 3 is 3. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to continue to do the opposite. I want to whittle it down because I want to get y down here by itself. So this is y divided by 3. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So instead of dividing, I'm going to do its opposite, which is multiplying by 3. And if I do it to this side over here, I'm also going to do it to this side over here. So 3 and 3 cancels out. That's just 1 or 1y or just y. So that y drops down there. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So that is the basic concept when we are solving for x that we're looking at doing. We're looking at combining like terms and doing the opposite. Let's go ahead and jump into number 3. I'm going to skip number 2 because I did number 2 in the intro video that I posted to advertise the fact that I was doing this. So I'm going to skip number 2, and I'm just going to move on to number 3. So if you want to see number 2, you're just going to go back to that video in my YouTube channel, and you can see that. So I'm going to say see number 2 there. Now, let's go to number 3. So number 3 is, go back to our worksheet here. Number 3 is 7 times the quantity of z plus 6 equals 70. So 7 times the quantity of z plus 6 equals 70. So we're going to get back over here. to our screen, and we're going to say, whoops, get my pen the right size here. So 7 times the quantity of z plus 6 equals 70. Now, before we combine like terms or do the opposite, in this case, we have to distribute this out. And when I say that, I mean just simply multiply 7 times z and 7 times 6. And we respect the operation of addition. So 7 times z gives us 7z plus, and that just drops down there. 7 times 6 is 42. And then that equals 70. Okay. So now again, we want to identify our terms. So let's get a different color for emphasis here. So 42 and 70 are not the same number, but they're like. So we're going to combine these two. And then the other term here is 7z, which is not like 42 or 70. So again, we're just following the same steps. We're going to do the opposite. So just like over here, the opposite of plus 3 was minus 3. So the opposite of plus 42 is going to be minus 42. And then because I do it to this side, it's an equation, I'm going to do it to this side. And you get a minus 42. So now 42 minus 42 zeroes out, and I'm just going to drop that 7z down. Drop that equal sign down. 70 minus 42 is 28. Now again, we're going to do the opposite. So because I have z multiplied by 7, because anytime these two numbers are together or touching, it's multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide it by 7 because it's multiplied by 7. So I'm going to divide it. And then if I do it to this side, I'm going to do it to that side. 7 divided by 7 is just 1 or 1z. And so z. And then 28 divided by 7 is 4. So I'm going to stop a brief moment there. We've done 2 problems. And I'm going to give you a second to see if you have any questions. If you do, please go ahead and put them in the chat window. I'll wait about 30 seconds. And if I don't see anything, I'll keep on moving. All right, I don't see any questions as of yet, but if more questions come up, please just go ahead and use the chat window there to ask a question. So now we're going to go back to the worksheet here, and we're going to move on to number 4. So number 4 is x over 7 plus 9 equals 10.3. So I'm showing a problem that has a decimal in it because on the GED test, you will also come against questions like this. So not every question is going to be straight ahead. So some questions are going to have fractions like we see here. And then sometimes they might have decimals. And this comes into play for the word problems. So if you're not prepared for that, you know, that's the idea of tonight, is to get you prepared for the things that you're going to see on the test. So it's not always just a straight ahead number. Sometimes it involves decimals, and it involves fractions when we're talking about solving for x. So I'm going to come over here, get my pencil color back, and here we go with number 4. So number 4 is x over 7 plus 9 equals 10.3. Okay, so again, we always want to look at what terms are alike because we want to combine them. And so just for emphasis, I'll use a different color. And so we have 9 and 10.3. They're not the same, but they're like. And then x over 7 is not like that whole number. It's different. It involves a variable in that term. So that's not like. So we want to combine these two together. So the way we do that is by doing the opposite. So we're coming back to these same steps. And see, that's the key thing that I want you to understand tonight is that over and over again, we're just doing these same steps. And so when I'm working with my students in my online course, or when I'm working with students in live classes, I always focus on make sure you get these steps down. And one of the things I recommend to my students, and I post this in the course, is that you need to do like 2 pages full of these kinds of problems. Because when you do, it builds the steps, it builds the process in your thinking so that each time you come across it, you know, you don't get confused, you don't worry. You get, I just want to, okay, I thought there was a question there. But each time you see this, you don't get wary. You know what to do. And so in my online course, one of the things that we do, and it just happens to be lesson 2 in the course, lesson 2, you know, you get some extra worksheets here because you just need to do these steps over and over again. There is no substitution at times for just practice in rote. Now, you don't want to overdo it, but you want to just make sure that you have these steps down. Okay, so now we're going to combine the like terms. So we have 9 and 10.3. So this is plus 9. So the opposite of plus 9 is minus 9. If I do it to this side, I'm going to do it to this side. 9 minus 9 is 0, of course. And so I'm just going to drop down that x over 7. I'm going to drop down that equal sign. And then 10.3 minus 9 is 1.3. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to do the opposite. Again, combine like terms, do the opposite. Combine like terms, do the opposite. If you can get this concept down, you can have this part of the test ready, and you'll be ready to answer these kinds of questions when you come upon it on the test. So again, this is x divided by 7. The opposite of division is multiplication. So we're going to multiply it by 7. Okay. If I do it to this side, I'm also going to do it to this side. That 7 crosses out. That leaves me with x. And then 1.3 times 7. Just have my calculator here. Gives us a 9.1 is our answer. So again, this is what this is about. So even though there might be some decimals involved, you still do the same step. Even though there might be some fractions involved, you still do the same steps. You're always combining like terms. You're always doing the opposite. And you're just slowly whittling these questions down until the very end. Let's go back to our worksheet and pick up on the next one. So now we're going to look at, let's skip number 5. I'll let you do that one on your own. Let's go down and do number 6. So 9 times the quantity of y plus 4 equals 90. So 9 times the quantity of y plus 4 equals 90. So we're going to come back over here to our whiteboard. And this whiteboard is kind of full, so we're going to get a clean one. Get my pencil color here. Nine times the quantity of y plus 4 equals 90. So again, before we can combine like terms, we need to distribute this out. So 9 times y equals 9y plus 9 times 4 equals 36. And then that gives us 90. Now we can identify which terms are like. Okay, so 36 and 40 are like. And then 9 is a number with the variable, so that's different. So that's not like. And so we want to combine these two terms. We want to do that by doing the opposite. So positive 36. So the opposite of that is a minus 36. Okay. And then if I do it to this side, because it's an equation, I have to keep it equal. So I also have to do it to this side. 36 minus 36 is 0. I'm going to drop my 9y down here. 90 minus 36 is 54. Now, again, we're still doing the same steps over and over again. Combine like terms, do the opposite. Combine like terms, do the opposite. So now we have 9y. So y multiplied by 9. And so the opposite of that is division. And so we're going to divide it by 9. And because this is equal to an equation, I'm also going to divide this side by 9. And so that gets canceled out. And so y equals 6. So again, step by step, over and over again, you're just doing the same steps over and over again. So I am going to do one more of these, and then I will hang around to see if you have any questions. So this next one we're going to do here is, let's just do number 8. Okay, so we're going to do 9 times the quantity of z plus 3 equals 108. So we're going to distribute this out. 9 times z is 9z plus 9 times 3 is 27. And then we're going to get 108. Again, we're going to identify the terms that are alike, which are these two. So we're going to do the opposite, minus 27. Because it's an equation, we're going to do it to both sides. That cancels out. We're going to drop our 9z down. And 108 minus 27 is 81. Then from there, we're going to do the opposite. So this is z multiplied by 9. And so the opposite of z multiplied by 9 is divided. So because division is the opposite of multiplication. So I'm going to divide it by 9. And if I divide this side, why? Because it's an equation. So if I want to keep these two sides equal, I need to do that. This cancels out. And then z equals 9. So again, I hope the things that we've covered tonight have been a benefit to you. Again, if you can get this skill down, you have one of the aspects that you need in order for the GED test, in order to have success on the GED test. And so now I open it up for questions. You can ask questions about stuff I've done here. You can have questions in general about the GED test, and I'd be glad to offer some help on it. And if you have questions, you can just go ahead and put it in the bottom of the chat window. While I'm waiting for any questions, the next thing I would say is that the next time we do this, we're going to do some word problems, because word problems is really where the rubber meets the road. But I think it's also important to get these basic skills down before you jump into the word problems. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining in tonight. I don't see any questions here. This video can be reviewed. It'll be posted to the YouTube channel so you can watch it again. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me and contact me with any questions that you might have, and I'll do my best to help you out. Thanks again for joining us on this live class. And again, next time we'll be doing some word problems.